first player we wanted to take a look at here was Bo Nix. He was QB, I believe, 13 last week. For over 200 yards, he had 9 rushes for 47 yards. I want to say Tampa Bay's was one of the more heavily picked survivor picks. So nobody was expecting anything out of Denver in the offense. And Nix just, from as soon as the game started, went right down the field, scored a touchdown, got the ball back, did it again. He looked so much better. The entire, Denver offense might be a little bit rejuvenated. And if Nix is going to be able to add nearly 50 yards rushing, he becomes a very interesting quarterback to have, especially in Superflex, I think.
Yeah, I agree. He could have some good games going forward, but this week at the Jets, that is a scary matchup. I think he's going to come crashing back down to reality this week.
Yeah, 25 completions, 216 yards. He might be able to repeat those stats, just some of them going to the Jets. That's just a tough matchup. But definitely, if you're a Broncos fan, that's a big win to go into Tampa, a hot team like that, and to really just destroy them.
And if he doesn't get those rushing yards on the ground and the rushing touchdown, I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about him. 216 yards passing. That doesn't quite do it. In fantasy football, you need a little more production than that to stay relevant.
Yeah. Well, moving on to a guy who didn't have any issues producing on the ground was Chuba Hubbard, part of the surprise Panthers attack last week. He was RB5, had 21 carries for 114 yards, had a receiving touchdown in there. Dalton might have just saved the entire Panthers offense. When Brooks comes back, we'll see how much that eats into Hubbard, but I think Hubbard showed that he's a very competent running back, and he might be able to say, hey, I'm going to be earning some of my touches as well. So I think at least until Brooks is back, Hubbard all of a sudden becomes a low-end RB2 in my opinion.
It'll be interesting to see how this Carolina Panthers offense does moving forward. I like them against the Bengals. I mean, what we saw from the Bengals defense on Monday night, I'll take just about anybody. But, I'm still not ready to trust this offense as a whole. I mean, was Bryce Young really that bad? I mean, come on.
I don't trust that the Panthers are going to be good every week. I don't think you're going to be able to trust them every week. But I do think the hot streak is going to continue this week against Cincinnati, especially for Hubbard. Cincinnati is giving up 142.3 rushing yards per game so far this year, and Hubbard's going to be their guy, so he's going to get that work.
Yeah. I agree, Marty. I'd like to see that. I have Hubbard. I picked up Hubbard in a lot of leagues. I think I've seen him as a free agent, at least before waivers ran last night. He was a free agent in a lot of leagues, which I was surprised with.
I would think that number's shrunken quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I think part of the reason too probably is people are worried that when Brooks comes in, that
he's
almost a wasted waiver pick. It only could be possibly good for 2 weeks if he comes back. I mean, obviously they probably use him in.
I think Hubbard, is worth picking up and spending fab on just for this week. I mean, I think he's in a great spot this week.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, he's in a good spot.
Moving on to another running back, Father Time. I thought would have caught up to Derrick Henry by now, but he continues to say no, running all over as Zach would call them, the Alice Cowboys. Still no D in Dallas, having 25 touches for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, finishes RB3 of the week. I think the first week, Derrick Henry owners got a little panicky. Yeah, he did score, but he looked old, slow, and they weren't giving him touches. I think now we kind of see that when the Ravens meet a team that is well overmatched, Derrick Henry is just going to go crazy and flirt with 20 touchdowns if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, he's already got 4 touchdowns, and he was negatively impacted big time the first week when they were coming from behind, and he's not a receiving back. So, and that was really his only dud performance. He's looked really good weeks 2 and 3. I think Henry's going to keep.
Are we worried about that this week against the Bills, though? Because this could be another game where they are always, chasing what the Bills score. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, we might get more of a week 1 performance.
Yep, I agree with that. I mean, you're not going to bench Henry, but I do I do agree with that.
I think
agree
it's. Go ahead, Eric.
I agree with Zach. I don't think we're going to see quite that production this week, but I was happy to see it last week. I had a 3-leg parlay with 2 touchdowns, over on the yard, and Ravens win. So happy to see that last week, but I don't think that's going to happen this week. I just think they'll be trailing a little bit more from behind. They won't be able to pound the rock as much.
We'll see if we develop a pattern with Henry. I think regardless, very safe for him. Just he's going to score a touchdown. It's just Baltimore's offense too good. He'll run it in.
So is it the trend that we can expect from the Dallas Cowboys as far as giving up the run? Because we've seen 2 weeks in a row now, Alvin Kamara, then Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
they're bleeding out over there, Marcus.
Is Devin Singletary in for a big game tomorrow night?
I would say we talked about a little bit in the pre-show where the Cowboys are front runners. When they play good teams, this is what's going to happen. Their defense isn't good, especially against the run, and they are going to get gashed. And it's going to lead to just Dak and the offense having comeback mode and a lot of inflated stats. When they face a team that's not very good, which I don't think the Giants are that good, we're going to see the Cowboys that go out and crush people. And you say, like, what's going on? Kind of like the Miami Dolphins of the NFC last year. So I think I'm expecting Dallas to make it look fairly easy, like they always do against the Giants.
Dallas is, I will throw this stat out there. So far through 3 weeks, Dallas is giving up 185.7 rushing yards per game. And Devin Singletary is averaging 85 yards per game over the last 2 weeks, both with less than 20 touches.
So are you all in on Singletary?
I'm not all in. I don't have him in any leagues, but that's because for this week, and coming into the season, I didn't like Devin. He wasn't on my radar at all. I wasn't interested in Devin Singletary, but he's looked good the last 2 weeks, and he's playing the team that's given up the most fantasy points to running back. So yes, I do like Devin Singletary at home this week.
Let's talk about a receiver that Marty does have. The wide receiver 1 last week, Jauan Jennings, 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Something I didn't see coming at all. And when I see my opponent having him in his lineup, I didn't think I was going to get beat by him. And yes, I got torched by him, putting up 50 points in fantasy football. What did you guys think? Did you see that coming? Is that going to be able to repeat itself?
I thought maybe he'd have like 8 or 9 catches for $150 and 2 touchdowns, but this is just crazy. This has got to be one of the more surprising stat lines I've ever seen in 20 years of playing fantasy football, to be honest.
He beat Debo's career best game. He beat Ayuk's career best game. I think it's just one of those weird things where I don't understand. You'd think they would want to spotlight Brandon Ayuk. You paid him all that money. There was, the turmoil over the offseason on both sides. This was his chance to shine. And I think Ayuk was very capable of doing exactly what Jennings did. And they're just like, nah, let's just let Jennings have a.
They're punishing him.
Day. I think that they could be punishing him, but it's also possible that Ayuk's just not ready. I mean, he didn't have a training camp.
There are probably important. Little things that we just don't factor in. It's just, kudos to you, Marty. I didn't see a lot of people picking up Jennings. Definitely didn't see anybody starting him.
I did not see Jennings having a game anywhere near this, but I did. I mean, it was a great opportunity with he had he had double-digit fantasy points in week 1, and that was with a healthy Debo, Ayuk, and drawing a blank on the tight end. But everybody was healthy.
Yeah.
Come on, neighbors.
Do you think it's repeatable? And when I say repeatable, not 11, 175, and 3, but repeatable in terms of he can produce very startable wide receiver numbers.
Definitely, as long as Kittle and Debo are out, I think absolutely.
Well, let's not forget Ricky Pearsall making a miraculous comeback in week 5.
Literally.
Which it does hurt a little bit being as big on Pearsall as I was in the preseason in Dynasty rookie drafts to see Jauan Jennings had this type of game, because this was supposed to be Pearsall, coming in when Debo's out. So, what could have been, but we'll see.
It's hard to imagine that the Niners would just ignore Jauan Johnson. They would just ignore him, Jauan Jennings, the rest of the season after a game like that. Like now they've seen what he can do. I mean, obviously there's so many mouths to feed in San Francisco when everybody's healthy that he's going to have dud performances, but I think that he's earned a spot after this game. Like I think he has a role now in that team.
You would think that, but we've seen stuff like this before. What was that running back on the Patriots name that just ran for 200 yards against the Colts and then slept in, so then never touched the ball again? Got cut.
That's Bill Belichick. I don't remember his name. I remember that.
Yeah,
But
exactly. You don't remember his name. Who knows? Jauan Jennings, years from now, might be forgotten.
The thing with Jennings, though, is he is a good run blocking receiver, right? That's why they have him on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I think they block with him a lot, so it's kind of like a shift this week. But like I'm sure they love to have him on the outside edge anytime blocking.
Yeah, and that guy, I believe his name was Jonas Gray. But moving on to another receiver we wanted to talk about. I think a lot of guys a lot of people liked this guy as a sneaky PPR play. But then when they saw how awful Bryce Young is, they didn't think it was going to happen. And in comes Andy Dalton to possibly save a season. Diontae Johnson, wide receiver 5, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. I think everybody is back. It's wheels up again for Diontae to have a really good season. Thielen is on IR. I do think Leggett's a little interesting in deep leagues, or at least it's there for him to do something. But Diontae, I think, is going to be somebody you're going to, in leagues, you got to start 3 wide receivers or more with flexes. He's going to be somebody you're going to want to be comfortable with starting every week, in my opinion.
Yeah, Diontae Johnson was a guy I drafted a lot later in. I traded for him in Dynasty. I just thought he was going to get peppered with targets. I thought he was going to have the Adam Thielen role, 10 to 20 targets a game, and just get pounded with the ball. Instead, Bryce Young has just destroyed the offense. They can't move the ball at all. And now Andy Dalton comes in and revives, brings it back to life. So I'm happy to see Diontae Johnson. The problem is I got cute in some leagues. And even though Diontae Johnson was my starter, I benched him for a guy like Jameson Williams that comes in and puts up a dud week. So when you get your guys, when you draft your guys, Terry McLaurin, Diontae Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, guys that had kind of a bad last couple weeks, and then they all hit in week 3. So you kind of got to get your guys and start them. Can't get cute.
I am right there with you, Eric. I was huge on Diontae coming into the season, and I had him benched in all my leagues this week because I mean, how could you start him after those first 2 weeks with Bryce? But I am still very excited to see this because I held on to him. He's on my bench, and he'll be in my lineup this week.
Yeah, without Thielen there, I think he definitely his usage is going to be pretty killer. I'm also interested to see if maybe this could resurrect the Jonathan Mingo hype from a year ago. Maybe, possibly.
Oh, come on. Zach, that's pipe dream.
I think it's if anybody, it's Leggett, in my opinion. I'm curious. Do we expect Dalton not to do that every week, but like to be serviceable, or is this just a 1-week wonder and we're going to look stupid this time next week or here in a couple of weeks and Deontay's back to no start and you don't want anybody?
No, really, I'd say no. But after watching Joe Flacco destroy last year, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And guys, remember, Andy Dalton is the only quarterback this season who's had a 3-touchdown, 300-yard game, and he's averaging that.
Yeah, it's great.
It's one game.
Here.
He's averaging that. He's just mean in his mode.
What I said is correct.
I think the Miami Dolphins would be thrilled to have him as their backup instead.
I don't know why more teams don't trade for people like Dalton. Eric makes a good point. You could just throw him into any roster. It's worth paying him when these guys go down like Tua. The drop off between Tua and Skyler is crazy. I mean, have someone like Darnold. Have somebody like you get it.
Yep. So the last guy we wanted to talk about out of nowhere, tight end 1 on the week, Dallas Goedert, 10 catches, 170 yards. I'm skeptical, but I also had Goedert last year, and he wasn't very good. I think by the end of it, Smith was hurt, Brown's out, and a lot of it was just a broken play. Defenders ran into each other, and he got like 70 of these yards on one play, it felt like. So I'm not sure, but are you guys buying Dallas Goedert in this horrible tight end start to the year as being somebody you're going to be happy to start every week?
Well, I mean, 10 catches, 170 yards, that might be more than what Kyle Pitts does all season. So why not?
A lot of tight ends don't have that much for their first 3 weeks. I mean, you got to look at it. If he's a free agent, I think he's worth adding. I think he's going to be very inconsistent, like a lot of tight ends. I mean, we've seen other tight ends come out of Hunter Henry had a monster game like this too. I mean, it's just we see this pretty often. A tight end erupts, you pick him up, and then you start him the next week, and he gets you 1 catch for 8 yards.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
There's very few tight ends that I'm happy to have in my lineup. It's almost like a lottery ticket, like what they're doing this year. We don't have that consistency at tight end. But 10 catches, the target share, that's something you kind of want to keep your eye on and see if he can keep that up. I have a feeling that he's not going to once those other receivers become healthy, but if you had him in the lineup this week, you're in good shape.